that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, August the 6th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know we are a family-friendly podcast. We do try to watch our language. However, there sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we begin this? Well, we begin this with, could it be possibly I told you so? Or for the simple fact of the matter, the chicken's coming home to roost. Because as I called it from the January 6th commissions, the DOJ decided to go down south to Mar-a-Lago to go talk to Trump's lawyers. Could it be the beginning of something, or could it be the beginning of nothing? Let's see.
And we're back with a CNN exclusive in our politics lead. Sources say that Donald Trump's legal team is in talks with key Justice Department officials in an effort to shield conversations Trump had while president. These talks are the first sign of direct communication between Trump's team and the federal criminal investigators who may investigate him about his January 6 actions. CNN senior crime and justice reporter Caitlin Polance joins us now live with this exclusive reporting. Caitlin, how significant are these conversations?
Well, Jake, this is very significant. So everything we're seeing here is the Justice Department circling around Donald Trump, his West Wing, even his statements made on January 6th. And sources today are confirming to Kara Scannell, Kristen Holmes, Gabby Orr, and I that there is direct communication between the Justice Department and lawyers representing Donald Trump. And so this development is not just any types of communications. It's really building on a story that's been unfolding over the past couple weeks, where there were people from the office of the vice president being brought before the federal grand jury in Washington, testifying about what they were hearing in the West Wing on January 6th. And then people in the White House counsel's office were receiving subpoenas to go to that grand jury. That tees up this possible privilege fight over executive privilege, what Trump was saying happening then. And then that leads to these conversations. That's what the conversations are about. And Trump's team is maintaining that Donald Trump has the ability to assert executive privilege and definitely protect the things that he believes should be secret about his presidency. The Justice Department on their end, they have a lot of history on their side, potentially giving them access to that, but they may have to go through the court first to get it.
You're also learning that Trump has personally been briefed on all this. How is his team handling all this internally?
Well, from what we know from our sources, they have been warning him that there are possible indictments coming in the January 6th investigation around him, and they are discussing defense strategies at least twice with him. He has been asking his lawyers and others if they think that he will be charged. But then, of course, this is Trump being Trump. Our sources say that he seems to be skeptical that he will possibly be charged. And even at times, he doesn't even appear to be listening to what some of his advisors are telling him.
So what could this mean? Could this mean that the beginning is near? Could this mean that Trump is doing his usual thing? Although the weird part is he's not saying it's a witch hunt this time. It's a witch hunt. They're trying to get me. They're trying to keep, because I won the election fair and square. It was stolen from me. My followers were trying to just secretly they were just protesting comfortably. They're making a big fuss out of this. Notice he's not saying any of this. Which goes to show you, ever since he got rejected from the previous election, of course, he's still going around making the rounds, in which I'm going to show very quickly the dangers of why he's still making the rounds and why should we as voters be paying attention to the midterms. But that's going to come down later down the road. But what I did want to actually talk about was, again, the significance of the January 6th commission. As I've been saying, there is a reason why the Democrats are trying to push this. Not only because there's a lot of smoke there, which a lot of people need to be held accountable, including the president, including the former president himself. But at the same time, guys, it gets to this whole situation that, again, they're building a case And the more that is shown, the more that we see, the more testifying that we get. You can't help but wonder, at the end of it all, will there be indictments? It's possible, but Trump should be prepared for it. But imagine if Trump did get indicted, especially since this indictment is not an impeachment, which means that the Republicans cannot put their head in the sand on this. But I'll just be curious to see what actually happens next in the coming months. Moving right along, guys. Again, inflation, you've heard that word so many times that you can practically say it in your sleep. But for a lot of people who are dealing with trying to make ends meet, imagine those that need life-saving medication, such as those as heart medication or diabetes, and you're forced to make a decision between your life-saving medicine and just trying to keep a roof over your heads, which is actually the reality for a lot of people.
These are the medicines Angelina Scott can't live without.
This is a blood thinner.
For high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and an irregular heartbeat.
Don't take these, my heart will stop.
But with sky-high inflation and hundreds of dollars in monthly medical costs, this notary and her husband, a maintenance worker, are falling behind on their bills, staving off shutoff notices. So to cut costs, she's stopped taking medicine for her irritable bowel syndrome.
People, well, you can afford not to. No, literally, I cannot afford to. It makes me really sick. Why do I have to choose between living and living?
In June, U.S. healthcare costs were up 4.5% from the year before. And with the price of food, gas, rent, and utilities surging even higher, millions of Americans are struggling to afford the care they need.
What this leads people to do is have to make horrible trade-offs between paying for their medication or their diagnostic test or seeing their physician or their doctor and having to pay for basic costs of living, their gas, their food, their groceries, their childcare.
A new survey from Gallup and West Health found roughly 2 in 5 adults, an estimated 98 million Americans, have delayed or skipped treatment, cut back on driving, utilities, and food, or borrowed money just to pay medical bills in the last 6 months. And 39% have major concerns about affording care in the coming months.
Inflation and its impact on healthcare are breaking families and breaking individuals, and we need to wake up and act.
Everything's went up. Everything but my paycheck.
71-year-old Libby Dancy is a caseworker for an organization that helps struggling seniors in Virginia, but she herself can't afford to retire.
I'll be working here probably until they find me laid out back there in my office.
A 3-time cancer survivor, she spends hundreds each month on critical medicine like heart pills, breathing treatments, and insulin. So she's tightening her budget, keeping her AC off in the summer heat, and foregoing her allergy meds, probiotics, and vitamins until payday.
What did that do to you physically?
Messed me up, messed my system up and everything,
High inflation is squeezing most Americans, sending U.S. household debt to a record high, more than $16 trillion.
I feel like it's suffocating me slowly.
For some, the budget balancing act grows more difficult by the day.
All those things are horrible. But how do I tough out trying to live?
And that is heartbreaking, man. That is beyond heartbreaking. But again, I find myself having to keep bringing this up every chance I get. You realize, had the Build Back America Better plan been in place, we probably would avoid inflation. Had we actually charged corporations at a higher tax bracket, had we started actually putting taxes on hedge funds, had we started putting taxes on debt, had we started putting more taxes on these inheritances and things of that nature, we would actually not be in the situation we're at right now. But this is the problem that a lot of people are facing. A lot of people are facing that decision. I never want to wish that on my worst enemy. The fact that, again, we weren't too long ago that we were talking about diabetes, people that had diabetes, and because the cost of insulin was shot up because of corporate greed, that people started to ration out their insulin, which is a dangerous thing to do. And so now it just feels like it's coming right back around circle again. It's not just insulin, it's heart medication, it's breathing treatments, it's diagnostic testing, dialysis. It all adds up. But this is the reason why I say, guys, come November, it's like, please pay attention to who you elect. Because the simple fact of the matter is there needs to be actual measures put in place. That the fact that the healthcare in America is still a for-profit system, and that is literally the problem. That healthcare in America is a for-profit system, which means that the best care goes to those who got money, while everybody else is pretty much left out in the cold. So again, be careful who you vote, because again, the current Congress, which is basically most Republicans that have shot down almost every bill aimed at helping healthcare, aimed at helping women, aimed at helping children, aimed at helping veterans. Republicans have shot them all down. Keep that in mind come November. That being said, guys, the case for Brittany Griner has concluded, and it's not surprising that, yes, she has been sentenced to a Russian jail for 9 years.
Conviction. We turn to ABC News. Britt Clennett, who is joining me now from Kyiv, Ukraine. Britt Griner remains at the prison where she's been held since February. She's expected to remain there during her appeal, basically the next 10 days. How likely is it, as Maggie was just discussing, that she could end up in a Russian penal colony? And just remind us how the conditions, if she were sent, would be different to where she is now.
Well, Russian prisons are notoriously harsh. They're considered nightmarish and in some ways endure harsh mental conditions as well. Some are forced, as Maggie mentioned, to watch propaganda videos on repetition. Certainly, there would be serious and mental challenges for anyone, you'd think, even for a professional basketball player. Trevor Reed, another American captured by Russians who was eventually freed, he was in that same prison for nearly 3 years in that penal colony. He described being in a place, in a crowded cell with serious criminals, including murderers who had psychological conditions. Some, he said, he was threatened by or felt threatened by. When he was arrested in Moscow in 2019, he was a healthy 175-pound student. And when he was released, he said he weighed 131 pounds. He was ill. He was coughing up blood and feared he had contracted tuberculosis. His family said they were shocked at really how thin and unhealthy he was when he came out. So it doesn't bode well for Griner having to be under these similar conditions.
So, Britt, Russia saying earlier today that the country is now ready to discuss a prisoner swap with the U.S. What's the latest?
Well, Russian spokesperson on Friday made it clear they are only willing to discuss on official channels, not via the press. But clearly, Griner's harsh sentence is a target of opportunity. There are plenty of questions, though, about what kind of deal Russia would accept and what deal the U.S. is willing to offer to get her back. How about other remaining Americans also in prison in Russia, like Mark Fogel and Paul Whelan? Will the offer include trading them for notorious weapons dealer Victor Bout, who is currently serving a 25-year sentence in the U.S.? So plenty of questions surrounding those deals.
And Bout, of course, referred to as the merchant of death. Britt, we know that you've been covering the war in Ukraine, amazing reporting. You've been there since the beginning of Russia's invasion. How has the conflict raised the profile of the case against Griner? To what extent is the war changing the heightened tensions because of what's happening in Ukraine?
Right. Well, I think it's really important here to note the timing of Griner's arrest, which coincided with the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it gave an added impetus, if you like, a target of opportunity, as I say, as tensions were rising between the US and Russia. So this is a highly politically charged case, as we know, and taking political hostages is in Russia's playbook.
And shifting to another issue.
So I'm just going to stop it right there, just because, again, it's a little difficult to sit there and say that, for the simple fact of the matter, guys, that you want to feel bad. I do feel bad for Brittany Griner. I do feel bad for Brittany Griner in the fact that, yes, some people just forget when they go out the country, you have to abide by another nation's laws. Your U.S. citizenship does not save you. And the fact that you're black too will not save you. But again, when you're traveling through areas, which again, if you have something that's contraband in said country, trust and believe you are going to be held by state country law. Now, again, the 9 years, everybody's like, oh, well, Brittany Griner needs to be freed. I'm like, let's not forget, and I don't mean to sound like a dick when I say this. Let's not forget, she violated their law in Russia. Of all places, Russia? Now, granted, if it was Switzerland, she probably could have got away with it with a slap on the wrist. You cannot play in these countries that have the strictest laws. I use Singapore. Singapore is probably the greatest example. You realize that a graffiti artist in Singapore got caned on site because he decided to tag a wall in Singapore. Officer caught him, caned him on the spot. He cried about how his rights are violated, not realizing you're an American on foreign soil. Brittany Griner is in that same spot. Now, will they do a trade for her? Possibly, yes. But at the same time, let's not forget, no one told her to go traveling with marijuana on her and not understanding that if you are caught, you are subject to their laws. Now, granted, will she get released? Possibly. I guarantee she'll never travel to Russia again. But this is why I tell people, especially black people, wherever you're going, know the rules, know the laws, know what you can bring and what you cannot bring. And if you're unsure, don't bring anything. The safest thing you can do, don't bring anything if you're unsure of what it is. Because Brittany Griner's story is just many of those who go overseas and just forget your citizenship doesn't go with you. You're on their rules. But moving right along, guys, I did want to talk about Democrats at least today because I'm a little bit annoyed with Democrats because, again, this just goes to show you, as the midterms are coming up, I have sat there and said Democrats are going to have a hard time convincing voters because on their failure on multiple campaign promises, not really a lot of reforms got pushed through. George Floyd police reform bill died. The Voting Rights Act died. The John Lewis Act died. I'm forgetting one. I know I'm forgetting one somewhere. But just those three major ones which should have passed, all died. And now the Build Back Better America plan has been chopped and screwed so many times. Paul Wall should have a writing credit on it. Khalees could actually learn a thing or two from that. The reason why I'm saying that is because this is the proposed bill that they're actually moving forward with right now. Which again, this is also how they got Manchin and Sinema to sign on this. So what they actually did, they dropped the tax boost on hedge fund executives because of Sinema. Sinema said if they don't drop the proposed tax boost on hedge fund executives, she would vote no. The measure now has a new tax where it says it would charge 1% tax on the shares company buyback of their own stock. So, which they try to say netting the government far more revenue. But hedge fund executives would be untouched. This is Sinema in a heartbeat. They also sat there and announced compromise revisions to the environment, healthcare, and tax package, which the final measure will still be over $700 billion, most of it for energy, climate, and health initiatives, reducing federal deficits from $300 billion. That $700 billion was coming down from 1.3 trillion is what they wanted to go with. At the same time, the 15% minimum tax on mammoth corporations has been trimmed down and will now raise $258 billion, which was down from $313 billion it could have raised. So, again, the thing that bothers me is that these provisions that they put in place, which you can also see on government.gov as well, congress.gov, I meant to say, but the whole thing about this is, what I'm mad about the Democrats especially the Senate Democrats, they caved. I understand for the most part, everybody's like, you got to work with the Congress that you got. True, but Manchin and Sinema are not for the people. Manchin and Sinema are for the corporate lobbyists. They are for the backers. They are for the ones that they can benefit from. Manchin himself is a walking conflict of interest. So is Kristen Sinema, because it wasn't just released not too long ago that Kristen Sinema went back to the Chamber of Commerce in her home state of Arizona and asked if the bill being pushed by Democrats was a great idea. This goes to tell you, yes, she does have a boss. And it's not Arizonians. It's the Chamber of Commerce. That alone should tell you everything you should want to know about Sinema. But again, this is the Democrats' dilemma. You're stuck with a simplified reconciliation group of 50 senators that all must agree. If not, Republicans will just reaffirm and say no, and nothing gets passed. But I get it to a certain extent. But who's really running the show here? Because if 2 Democrats go rogue, there goes your entire plan to get anything passed. Because Sinema and Manchin, those 2 senators alone, kill any progressive movement the Democrats were suggesting outside the House Democrats. Because the one thing I will say about the Senate Democrats, most of them are basically moderate, which is just like Republican light. Just enough to be considered conservative, just a little bit to consider liberal. But I digress. Moving right along, guys. Manchin is also in the news because him and Collins are pushing an updated Electoral Count Act. And here's their explanation as to why.
More essential to the survival of a democracy than the orderly transfer of power.
A bipartisan group of senators have proposed a set of reforms to the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The law was adopted after a presidential election in 1876 when several states submitted competing slates of electors.
The bill that we've introduced, it includes a number of important reforms.
Number 1, a vice president's role is purely ministerial and prohibited from interfering with electoral votes. It raises the objection threshold in Congress from 1 representative in each chamber to 20%.
That would make a shift from a single representative under the current ECA to 87 House members. 87 from 1. It also improves on basically only 1 member of the Senate to 20 must ratify.
Number 3, states electors must be appointed prior to election day. Number 4, the bill would require Congress to defer to the state's electors. And lastly, it would make it more difficult for a state to override its popular vote.
Our bill permits a state to modify the period of its selection only in extraordinary and catastrophic circumstances, and also only as provided under that state's law enacted prior to Election Day.
A push to update this act comes after supporters of former President Donald Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election. Senators Collins and Manchin hope to pass the bill into law by the end of the session of Congress in December.
We were all there on January 6th. That happened. That was for real. And we have a duty responsibility to make sure it never happens again.
Okay, so the justification makes no sense. That you want to change the way the electoral college process works, excluding some rules and regulations to prevent another president who wanted to be a dictator influencing a crowd of people to go storm a not so secure capitol or a government building in which to make sure that they don't become terrorists to overthrow a government process. No, what you can do is get rid of the Electoral College and go by the popular vote. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. The Electoral College is outdated. The Electoral College at one point was put in because our population at the time of its inception is way different than it is now in 2022. And we can honestly go by it. It is amazing that you want to get. I said, and think about this. You ever wonder why a lot of these candidates only visit certain states? They visit Iowa, they visit Illinois, they'll visit California, they'll visit Florida. You know why? Who's got the most electoral votes? The states with the most electoral votes always seem to get the most visits from candidates. Now, imagine if you took away the Electoral College and went by the popular vote. Would that not change the way that potential candidates are visiting, pick their locations? Keep in mind, there's a reason why they call them battleground states, because those states can make or break a confirmation. But I've always hated the fact that they have had more complacency because of electoral count vote than most other states. But instead of actually just abolishing electoral college altogether, let's make it more complicated so we can make sure that another attempted coup by terrorists doesn't happen again. Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever that Manchin and Collins are trying to instigate, considering the fact that Manchin can't stop using the word inflation, and Senator Collins can't seem to forget the fact that you've done nothing because you're a Republican. Moving right along, guys, in the case of Breonna Taylor, that has actually came back up again, as 4 of the officers have been currently arrested and indicted with charges related to Ms. Taylor's death. And all I can say is it's been past damn time this should have happened.
4 current and former Louisville, Kentucky police officers involved in the deadly apartment raid that killed Breonna Taylor. Those officers are Joshua James, Kelly Goodlett, Kyle Meany, and Brett Hankinson, all charged with federal civil rights violations. And you may remember Hankinson was previously acquitted of charges that he endangered 3 of Taylor's neighbors by firing bullets into their home. Attorney General Merrick Garland says the officers sought a warrant for Taylor's apartment, knowing there was probably a lack of probable cause.
Specifically, we allege that Ms. Taylor's Fourth Amendment rights were violated when defendants Joshua James, Kyle Meany, and Kelly Goodlett sought a warrant to search Ms. Taylor's home, knowing that the officers lacked probable cause for the search. Breonna Taylor should be alive today. The Justice Department is committed to defending and protecting the civil rights of every person in this country. That was this department's founding purpose, and it remains our urgent mission.
For more, we bring in ABC News senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky. So, Aaron, we just heard from Attorney General Merrick Garland saying Breonna Taylor should still be alive today. What is next for the Department of Justice? What's next for this case?
Well, now it has to go through the prosecution phase, and this is where it becomes a little bit more challenging, because for all the rhetoric about following the law and all of that, there is a question of now proving that Breonna Taylor's civil rights were violated, as the charges indicate. That may not be hard to do, given the circumstances of the case, but Attorney General Merrick Garland expressed confidence that these officers needed to be held account. One of them has agreed to plead guilty. The other 3, for now at least, are going to move forward with their prosecution. And I think a challenge for the Justice Department here, Deirdre, is that 3 of those officers had not been charged by the state. The one who was acquitted, as you mentioned. But Attorney General Garland said that sometimes there are crimes that the federal government alleges that need to be vindicated. And when they're not vindicated by the state, that's when the Justice Department needs to step in.
And he's exactly right. Because the department, because even though the governor Brasher of Kentucky did want more to be done in the case of Breonna Taylor, it was a certain AG that was related to a certain state senator for the same state of Kentucky that brushed it all on the rug. So we will follow that story as it comes along, because again, I've never understood how in the world those officers because again, them illegally obtaining the warrant and false pretenses. We could sit there and argue all the time. They knocked, they did knock, they didn't have any body cameras on. They tried to come after Breonna Taylor's boyfriend because, again, if somebody's breaking into my house and announcing themselves, yes, I'm shooting too. So again, it's going to be interesting to see where it comes from, where it goes into that story. But again, hopefully, justice will be served. So, credit scores, we love them, we hate them. Somehow, before 1989, people were still getting stuff without them. That being said, guys, if you have Equifax, the next story, well, of course, everybody's got Equifax. But if you always wondered if you kept getting the incorrect scores sent out to lenders whenever you tried to apply for something, the next story may actually concern you a lot.
An important consumer alert. Credit reporting company Equifax sent lenders incorrect credit scores last spring for millions of customers. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report. Some scores changing by as much as 20 points in either direction. It was enough for some prospective borrowers to be rejected for a loan. Equifax says it has fixed the error, calling it a coding issue.
Yes, a coding issue. But here's the thing. But here's the thing about what those loans. That for the simple fact of the matter is, if you've been down this route, especially in the loan department, you already know that once the lender gets their information from the credit report, it's usually that's it. It's almost like their decision is final. So imagine you think you're doing pretty good, and your Equifax sends the wrong credit score to your lender, and you're denied. Except you come to find out that the score that they received was not the actual score. See, there is no repercussions for Equifax, for Experian, for TransUnion, the three biggest corporate, the three credit reporting systems that we do use in the U.S. When they make a mistake, they don't pay for it. It's the consumer that does. And again, I'm not surprised if there's not litigation following Equifax, because again, I've sat there and said it. Credit scores didn't get invented until 1989 by the Fair Isaac Corporation, which again, I still think it's funny that it's called Fair Isaac, and yet it's screwing people over by the day. But it's amazing to me that if you're wondering, especially if you're wondering about your Equifax score, please protect yourself. So definitely contact the credit bureau, dispute anything, or if you've had anything that was submitted by Equifax and it still did not have the appropriate credit score, dispute it, get that thing fixed. Because the one thing I'll say about credit, it will definitely make or break your lifestyle. And it's so easy to lose and a lot harder to climb up. But again, that's capitalism. It runs on a debt cycle. Moving forward, speaking of things that just, I never thought I'd see the day of, Alex Jones, for all those that don't remember, much like Bill O'Reilly and everybody else, he was one of the crazy, extremely conservative, far right-wing nuts, but he was in a tinfoil hat all of his own. Keep in mind, Alex Jones was and is still currently going through court right now. But he said something that I never thought he would say, and I think it's only because he's about to pay a boatload of people money for defamation of character. He finally admitted that Sandy Hook was 100% real, although I think it was more for lawyer defense than actual his belief.
Jones' stunning admission came during a contentious cross-examination.
It's 100% real.
Finally conceding the Sandy Hook school shooting did happen. After years of insisting on his InfoWars show, the massacre was a hoax.
How could you believe any of it? It's 100% real. And the media still ran with lies that I was saying it wasn't real.
The parents of Jesse Lewis, one of 20 first graders who died in the massacre, are seeking $150 million in damages.
To restore the honor and the legacy of my son that was tarnished by Mr. Jones.
Jones blasted Jesse's father on his show yesterday.
He is being manipulated by some very bad people. I mean, I'll just say it because I got to be honest. He's slow.
But in court, he faced Jesse's mother.
Jesse was real. I am a real mom.
Testifying their 6-year-old son and their pain were real. The conspiracy theorist has been a difficult witness.
This is not your show.
Admonished yesterday by the judge for lying on the stand.
You're already under oath to tell the truth. You've already violated that oath twice today.
And today he was caught in another lie by the plaintiff's attorney.
Your attorney's messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years.
Including text messages about Sandy Hook Jones failed to share, as ordered by the court.
And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have text messages about Sandy Hook. Did you know that?
The jury will determine what, if anything, Jones must pay. And Thompson.
The look on his face. It's one thing I got to say above all else. The look on people's faces when it's just like, gotcha, bitch. And it was like, that's what it felt like. Do you see? He's like, you do understand that your lawyer is messed up and gave me a digital copy of your cell phone. I see every text message you ever sent out. Do you know what perjury is, Mr. Jones? Which, by the way, at the time, guys, this news story coming out, the jury has actually ran their verdict. Alex Jones must now pay that couple $45 million. Now, granted, $45 million is not going to bring their son back. It's not going to give them feel-good moments. But the one thing you can do with folks like that in the tinfoil hat industry, aside from calling them out, make them pay for it. Because trust me, even though Alex Jones is no longer on the airwaves, even though his podcast is kind of falling to the wayside, and the fact that he is about to be $45 million less, it's still not enough. Because trust me, he wasn't the only one peddling that. Fox News for the longest time was calling it Christ actors too. They also need to pay for pretending to be a news station. But you remember, you guys, I said at the beginning of this podcast that, again, with Trump making the rounds, even though he is being currently investigated or being talked to by DOJ, at least his lawyer group is, I have been saying, guys, that this September, this midterm is going to be definitely interesting, considering the fact that Trump has been parading around backing candidates, and what's scary is they're winning by wide margins.
Defining primary night wins for Donald Trump-aligned candidates.
I am tough, my friends, and I am just getting going.
Despite weeks of hearings by the January 6th committee laying out serious allegations against Trump, Republican voters on Tuesday stuck by his loyalists.
Do what you have to do to get him in. You'll see a big difference.
Including Blake Masters for the U.S. Senate in Arizona.
We can and will beat Mark Kelly in November.
And other hardline election deniers in the state. And Carrie Lake is leading for governor in a race that's too close to call.
The MAGA movement rose up and voted like their lives depended on it.
Trump also helped oust Rusty Bowers, who testified about the pressure he faced to overturn Arizona's 2020 election. The Arizona House Speaker lost to a Trump-endorsed challenger. In Missouri, Senate candidate Eric Schmidt with the win.
We need America First fighters who will advance the America First agenda.
Over in Michigan, Congressman Peter Meyer, one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump last year, lost his race against a Trump ally.
We're just sick of the politics, sick of everything being a question of fear or anger.
The GOP's next major primary is the Wisconsin governor's race next week, and then Wyoming, where Liz Cheney is trying to fend off a Trump-backed challenger and defend her investigation into January 6th.
I told you. And I don't mean to keep saying I told you so, but this is what's going to happen. That whoever finds the Trump train, and trust believe, there are still Republicans that are still going to do that. They'll ride the Trump train because despite what we saw on January 6th, there are some people out there who vote Republican, I swear, are either very challenged or have amnesia. Like they don't remember the last time the Republicans were in power, the economy took a downturn. If you were a corporation or a rich person, it was Christmas for you. If you were middle or lower class, it was hell for you. And it's amazing to me now that you have candidates out there who, again, backed by Trump, are winning their primaries. Keep in mind, in an election year, where Republicans are changing the voting rights in every city, in every state. It's the reason why if the Voting Rights Act and the John Lewis Act were both in place right now, we could breathe a lot easier because Republicans are the only party telling the election has been stolen, that there's still votes out there, that dead people voted for Biden. Take your pick. Those lies keep getting recycled and reiterated all the time. But as you can see, those that are out there are believing it and voting. We do not need another Trump-Hillary situation where a lot of individuals decided that neither candidate was great, so they decided to sit both of them out. This is not one of those times, especially in the sense because even though it's midterms, Republicans will be happy to either have the House or the Senate. You don't think Mitch McConnell would love to have his old job back at the Senate if the Republicans took over? You don't think Kevin McCarthy would be happy being House Majority Leader if they got the House back? Or bonus points if they got both? Because if they got both, you basically have another Obama administration where you have a Democratic president, but a House and a Senate that is out to basically prevent anything that you try to do. Again, please get active, get informed, and go vote. Because I do not want to live in a society where a lot of Trump cultists have power that they shouldn't have. But before we get to our feel-good segment, guys, there is one last story because, again, this story just recently developed, and the horror is, imagine going to a Native American festival to celebrate culture, and everything is about that particular ethnic group. and then some idiot decided to pull a Charleston.
Gallup, New Mexico is reeling this morning. What was supposed to be a celebration of Native American culture and heritage turning into a nightmare. And it all happened in a matter of seconds.
Sounds of celebration soon erupting into screams and chaos as an SUV drove through the crowd during the ceremonial parade in New Mexico Thursday. Panic parade goers seen running for cover.
It came straight towards us, the vehicle.
The terrifying moment during a celebration of Native American culture and heritage in the small city of Gallup, about 2 hours west of Albuquerque.
I just want to say to everybody thank them for the quick action, getting out of the way. Our police officers telling everybody to get out of the way. A lot of the folks that were in the straightaway, they're all okay.
City officials say no one was struck by the SUV, but according to the New Mexico State Police, multiple people were injured in the ensuing panic, including 2 police officers who were treated at the scene. Officers seen surrounding the vehicle, pinning 2 people on the ground. Authorities now say all 3 people inside the SUV have been detained, with the driver in police custody. Thursday's incident just the latest example of community parades targeted by violence. Last November in Wisconsin, an SUV plowed through the crowd during a Christmas parade, crashing into people head-on, fatally striking 6. And just last month in Illinois, a 4th of July parade turned deadly when a gunman opened fire, killing 7 people and injuring dozens others.
Gallup city officials said there was a secondary report of shots fired, but police say no weapons were found in the vehicle that drove through the parade route. The investigation is ongoing. Savannah.
I don't know about y'all, but I was waiting because I was like, let's be honest, folks. Let's really be honest. We all know that if they didn't announce it, especially black people, come on now. If they didn't announce who was behind the wheel or who was in that vehicle by now, I think in the words of the amazing world of Gumball, I think we know where this is headed. But yes, it is sad that folks are just disrupting peaceful celebrations, gatherings, and even 4th of July stuff, you celebrate that too. Because again, this just goes back to tell you the sad state of affairs this world is in, and the fact the laws that are being treated, especially in the ways of gun violence, as you guys have heard me say multiple times on this podcast. But again, with that story, we will follow along. Thankfully, nobody did not die. There were people that were injured. However, there are no fatalities. So that's always a silver lining there. But that being said, guys, we're going to move to our feel-good segment because usually how the fact we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes making these faith humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. Hopefully it's not bad where you're at, but we do want to leave you guys out with some good vibrations, and hopefully these next 3 stories will do just that, especially this one where the aspirations of a teacher who decided to start with a magic school bus and wound up changing minds at universities. I thought this was pretty cool.
For years, students here in Grapevine, Arkansas, spent more than 2 hours on the school bus every day.
Morning, how you doing this morning?
Time that local scientist Billy Hudson saw as an opportunity. So 15 years ago, he did something that back then sounded straight out of science fiction. He created a magic school bus wired with internet and computers.
It was magic. It had hands-on activities.
Students would spend time learning about science. Now, more than a decade later, Hudson and his wife have taken the program off the bus and into Vanderbilt University, creating Astronaut, a 6-week program at the medical center, teaching rural and diverse students about STEM subjects.
What a difference to take a student from I would say, where I grew up, the backwoods, and you bring them into a research lab.
Astronauts graduates are thriving, including Lauren Taylor. She was on that Arkansas school bus when we first visited 15 years ago and just graduated college with a triple major in biology, chemistry, and psychology.
I do believe that the time on the bus sparked my interest in science.
Up next for her, medical school.
I know that the kid on the bus 15 years ago would be so proud of where I am right now.
Talent is out there. Diversity is out there in rural America, but you have to bring special opportunities to those kids. You can't wait for them to come to you.
Rahima Ellis.
And again, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. when it comes to teachers, especially talented teachers like that, they find a way to get to students. And that man and what he decided to do with a school bus and technology, again, impacts a lot. And that's the reason why I have such a special place in my heart for educators. They don't get the recognition or pay for all that they do. And as you can see from there, the program that he had on that school bus is inspiring kids regardless of where they're from. I just thought that was pretty cool. So the next story that I got, guys, hang on a second. Oh, right. Again, get them while they're young and the possibilities are endless. This is why whenever I see things in the younger generation, it just makes me think that, you know what? They're going to be all right. But this 8th grader that I'm about to show really, really is dedicated to climate change. And again, you love to see it.
8th grader from Florida determined to change the world, helping to lead fellow students when it comes to environmental conservation. Let's meet Marcus Williams.
I always had an interest in animals, but I thought I could do more. So I wanted to get together with some of my teachers and really think about ways that we could do more in the club. The Eco Club is a club that's dedicated to ecology, dedicated to helping animals, and dedicated to just spreading knowledge. Basically, we get the kids the opportunity to learn how to grow their own food, how to cook their own food, how to care for animals, how to recycle. We have about 120 kids between the elementary school and the middle school.
I'm the Vice President of Zoological Operations here at SeaWorld of Florida, and I oversee our rescue operations that our teams run every day. About 6 years ago, I got a phone call coming home from a rescue about a school group that wanted to produce lettuce for our manatees here at SeaWorld. This is the first time that I got to meet Marcus.
JP has definitely been my mentor, my role model. He's done so much for me.
When we started our relationship and our partnership with the Eco Club, I got to meet Marcus on the first day, and this young man was doing things. He had a drive for the ecosystem. He had a drive for how can he help the environment.
Our initial idea here was to grow a couple heads of lettuce just to get to the families of Eco Club. We've actually grown over 1,000 heads of lettuce that we donated to the Manatee Recovery Program at SeaWorld.
That's what the environment needs. Someone who is willing to go out there and say, here's what we can do, here's how we get there. This is why we have a partnership with the Eco Club. This is also why Marcus is such a special young man. Now, our hope with the Eco Club, with this mission, our mission all tied together, is to continue to grow the next generation. You know, the Marcuses of the world that are out there who want to help animals out there in the wild, who want to figure out the next way to make better oyster beds or how to produce better antibiotics and honey for animals that are injured. It's an honor to walk with someone like Marcus and watch him grow up.
One of the things I've learned across this long journey, I feel, is just how important one person can be. I hope to help change the world just by enlightening people. This club can expand so much, and maybe even nationwide. It can really make a difference.
Congrats to Marcus at a young.
And again, you love to see it. You love to see it, especially a young man who is wanting to change his ecosystem around him for the better, and to be able to teach kids to do the same. That's a beautiful thing. The last one I got, guys, again, I always say representation matters and history is being made. As of today, in, I want to say, the Marines' 246 years of being around, we've just elected our first 4-star Black general. Yeah, that's right, 246 years, give or take. Check it out.
A moment for all of us as history was made this week with the Senate confirmation of the first Black 4-star general in the Marines. Lieutenant General Michael Langley has been a Marine for 37 years with tours of duty in Japan, Afghanistan, and Somalia. He's now set to oversee 6,000 Marines as the new head of U.S. Africa Command. He will attain his new rank at a ceremony in Washington this weekend.
And definitely congratulations to the new 4-star general. And I think I was right, 246 years. I don't know what number stuck in my head. I feel like it's lottery numbers. But yes, Lieutenant General Michael E. Langley, please forgive me if I mispronounced that, sir. You definitely deserve that and more to be the military's first 4-star Black general. But with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. I do thank everybody that liked, that watched, that Let me know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. Let me first shout out to my buddy Vaughn, BigBZA on all socials. They the Vaughn Westfield on Facebook. Definitely check him out as he's back to producing beats. Definitely check him out on BigBZA.4 beats, and he'll tell you how you can get a hold of them, and even more so if you decide to purchase them. But definitely check him out there. As you can see, guys, my handle on all socials is BlackFox447. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Snapchat. You can find me, Twitch. You can find me on Twitch. Technically, you can find me everywhere. Like and share, guys. I usually post a lot of things. Sometimes funny. Sometimes I get a review of even gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I am all about positivity, move people forward, and really just being on a mission. I'm basically on a mission of just spreading human decency. I'm not asking to be good Samaritans, guys, but brothers, especially brothers. I mean, we see each other all the time. Say hi. Check on your brothers if you know. Like I said, check on them. You're definitely doing okay. Check on your friends and family. Check on your strong people because you know why? We're all dealing with something. Everybody's got a battle or going through a storm you may not know about. But just saying hi, hello, or checking up on somebody may do a lot more than put a smile on their face. You actually might save a life. And again, it takes zero energy to be kind. It takes 100% of your energy to be a dick. So just simply fracking, be nice, be kind. Also, guys, COVID is still out there, especially with the new version of monkeypox. I did not realize that was a thing. But as that's out, guys, please wear a mask. Please be safe when you're going to highly congested areas. Protect yourself because that's how you're going to protect others, and that's how we're going to get through this. The link at the bottom that you see there, guys, you copy and paste that into your browser. Will take you to a link to that, the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, Get Bit, of course, Confidence Podcast. Do check them out, like and subscribe. Let people know about them. We're trying to grow these things into bigger and better things. But definitely let me know your opinions on everything we talked about tonight. I still want to know. I still want to carry the conversation. But with that being said, guys, again, the absolute last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind for yourself, but we're providing a logical perspective to go along with it. We do a lot better as a society. We're informed, progressive, we move forward, we try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first 4-star black general into the U.S. Marines, electing our first woman to a high-ranking commanding position in the U.S. Navy. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why do we elect different politicians but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace!